places that are selling themselves as a type of hospital. Why? Because we've been talking about the modern lens of Christianity, lowercase Christianity, and it's just selling like a self-help. It's like self-help for your goals in life, for your preferences. Whereas when you go to liturgy, you're actually lowering your preferences and wants and desires, and you're actually participating in something that's healing, not because it's going to reward you with a raise that week. Oh, can you believe it? Christ is real. I got a raise. Well, yeah, sure. Glory to God, you got a raise, but it's not a technology. You know what I mean? And that's like a key distinction that, especially in the West, everything's technological based. Everything's a fix. Everything's duct tape. Even Jordan Peterson, still selling Christianity like it's duct tape. Like, oh, it's the best fix. Well, it can't just be that. It has to be more than that. But anyway,
you need a little bit of order in your life. You're disassociating with yourself, and you're just a big giant mess. You can't.
I'm so good at that. I'm so glad you're good at that, because I can't tell you how many times that my counterpart, it comes up, and then they're like, well, everyone should do it, and no, not everyone should do it. So
no, not everyone should. Although if I do it long enough, I basically turn into a newfie. My Jordan Peterson, West Coast becomes very East Coast. Like, oh, Lord, thunder, Lord of Jesus, oh Christ, oh, he's up in a tree there, by oh Lord,
like
Jesus.
Picture. That's funny. Yeah, you more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad he wasn't like French Canadian, because then I could really pull it. Oh, no, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Tabarnak, let's talk about Peterson for a second, because he's an interesting little cat. I have his book on the back shelf there. And I actually credit Peterson.
What's it called? How to organize your bookshelf?
How to organize it? Yeah, it's 12 rules for someone's
12 books.
Someone else's life, maps of meaning. You need a map for meaning. Like, where else you going to find it?
It's like, what's a book without pages? It's like, is it even a book?
Is it a tree? Like, what do you even mean, bucko? Like, look at this typesets. What is that? That's order. That's order in the world. It's like, you have to have order to be able to have typesets. Like, what is a font? What do you even mean?
If you got a chaotic bookshelf, why should anyone listen to you?
What is it? Alphabetical? With that alphabets, there's order right there. Like, you're just substantiating order in your house.
For God's sakes, do it backwards from Z to A. There's still some sort of order, but just don't make a mess.
Just be traditional in some sense. Like, start from somewhere. You got to start somewhere and build upwards. It's a hierarchy of order.
Look, print all of the iconography on your jeans.
I want to see him. Jordan Peterson is a pro wrestler in the 1980s.
Yes.
Comes out with the robe
or the Mexican
and the tights,
headdress. Yeah,
just Jesus on his crotch. Just
iconography and halos everywhere.
Tabarnak. So yeah, I still credit him. I remember his. I remember when he first went on Rogan, and I was still very much in the anti-theist school. And but it begins softening, and he's talking about these things, and I think it was a good onboarding for people who are far away from things.
Sure, it's like a raft.
But I also think there's something to be said about almost Christianity in your DNA, and that doesn't always mean that you're raised in your household. I think that's useful, but I mean, even with my Eastern Orthodox ish, we were never raised within the church. That whole thing. So
wait, you were raised like there's a cultural Eastern Orthodox the same way there's like a cultural Jew.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of. I mean, my grandfather had a very conflicted relationship with his family, and I think with the idea of being Ukrainian, Slavic, whatever you want to call it, right? He was very much in that school of like immersion, like my kids, my mom and her sisters, and then down to me was like, no, be Canadian, like be Canadian, master Canadian, and then the other stuff can come afterwards, right?
Like an identity, it's like an identity choice.
Right. So we had icons in the house and we had that kind of stuff, but it was never really, we didn't go to church often, and we that kind of stuff. We didn't go to liturgy. So, but it was around, and I, just to say all this, it's like, but I think there's something that's baked into the DNA of some people where when the light switch gets turned on or the calling comes or whatever you want to call it, it's very easy to go from even as far out as you can back home, I think that's the yoking I was talking about, I think that if you yoke your kids, like, again, I told you, like, I grew up in this like non-traditional Christian thing. And honestly, my mother is more of the priest in the house than my father, right? The more memorization of the scripture, total, just completely immersed in scripture, right? And obviously, I mean, I would disagree with her methodology and things, but that was enough for me. Like you said, that if that's what you're referring to, the DNA is like, what is the thing that gets imprinted very early for you, that even if you leave and you're a degenerate, in Los Angeles, like I was, total relativist, wild, artistic, shock value, Jimbob. Whoa, look how cool I am. I have silver shoes. You're right. There's something that gets prompted. What I want to know, though, is like, is the thing that prompts you to reorient your bearings or whatever back to home, is that the yoke itself, or is it something else that then like points you in the other direction? You know what I mean? Like the thing that you're pointing to, the target, is different than the thing that prods you, that provokes you. I can't speak for other people. I can only speak for my own experience. I think even when I was fully outside of it, doing a lot of drugs, all that kind of stuff, you never feel comfortable. There's always that feeling of like, well, this sucks. Like there's something bearing down on you. Like I remember when I had experiential experience where I called out. I was my daughter had just been born. We're going to second lockdowns in Montreal. I had a hand injury that had taken me out of work even before COVID. I just witnessed the George Floyd protests outside my window in Montreal, which really just kind of like, I say about liberalism is that it's the art of stacking contradictions. So you stack all these massive contradictions in your head, like the cartoon of a dish pit where all these dishes are stacked upon each other, waving around, and all it just takes is one little thing go pink, and you either go crazy or go back to God, or maybe a bit of both. And for me, it was a George Floyd protest where I looked out my window and I was like, even my overactive, anti-theist brain looked at it, I'm like, that's a religious ceremony. What's going on? It
was mimicking. Oh, that's interesting that you saw that the unavoidable counterfeit mimicry of something that's ultimately has to be true because it's basically mimicked, like the argument, the absurdity of the contrary, right? That you could never not see these structures. And to point it back to Jordan Peterson, he's really good, at least at probably with the help of his buddy Jonathan Peugeot, which they probably have sleepovers with bunk beds and stuff. Late night talks. I always have this image of him. He's like, it depends on who gets to decide who's on the bunk. It's like
top or bottom, Jonathan.
I don't mean to be crass or crude, but top or bottom. So
I've got flaps on my bum.
Oh man. I've got an icon tramp stamp, doesn't mean anything.
Look, so, I just drank a lot of water right before all of this. I gotta go. I'm older. I might have to get up in the middle of the night and have a pee.
Look, I eat when I get up at 2 a.m. to eat to pee. I also eat. I take a bite of filet mignon raw.
with peanut butter, because as I'm a wild man.
It's like you got to keep things up in the air, and you don't know what's going to happen. It keeps you on. Keeps your game up.
It's a little bit of a flavor explosion. You never know. It's high protein and high fructose all at the same time.
Yeah. So what you're saying is like, that's interesting that we basically have the same timeline. Like
look, sorry to cut in. Like myself, Buck Johnson, Matt Erickson, Adam Patrick, Tommy Salmons, just to name 5 of my closest associates and people I have on the show, and we move in a circle quite often. All of us all can pinpoint around. For me, it was October 2020 when I literally called out to God. I was calling out. I'm like, what do I do? I was having breakdowns. And I'm not an overly emotional person. I operate out of anger and annoyance, and like occasionally some mirth. Like I'll laugh at a joke. Otherwise, I'm just generally annoyed. I'm irritable. So I was had my newborn daughter going through all this stuff. Rainbow Connection would come on, and I'm pouring. Like I'm just ugly crying.
Yeah.
And I called out to God. I'm like, I don't know, what do I do? And I had a very clear voice in my head said, bear witness. And I was like, okay, I'll do that, not knowing what the heck I had just gotten myself into. And the week later, I got hit with a railroad of shame, like a lifetime of shame hit me, and that's when I knew it was real. It was like, that something happens. You're like, okay, maybe I'm going crazy, but I wasn't even drinking at the time. So I'm like, well, it can't even be that.
So wait, so when you say shame, it sounds like here's my question. Is it even possible to experience shame, a boatload of shame, without first hitting as a precondition a boatload of humility?
Right, exactly. Because what's the precondition of that is I'm wrong. I'm not just wrong, and I'm not just wrong about something novel, like
the whole worldview,
a prediction wrong.
Yeah.
Everything collapsed into one thing, and then got confirmed by a very clear voice that was not my own, saying bear witness, which is not something I would ever have come up with saying. I had no idea what the hell that was. I'm like, what is, I had to talk to Father Turbo on a private call about that. I'm like, what is that? He's like, confess. Like, go to liturgy, confess. Because that's, I mean, there's many ways you can extrapolate that, what that means. But it was in that moment, I was like, okay, I've got to change everything, and not just something, not just a simple little prayer rule. I got to change my entire way of being. So,
wow, that's wild.
Again, I don't think, that was extreme, but I think a lot of people around the same time are having the exact same something.
Yeah, it was
happen.
quite the sort of pinpointed, because that really rattled everyone's view. Like wherever you stood, there was this massive contrived division that happened where it was like, wow, I share your view that, like, my experience at least was that everything was very clearly religious ritual, like you said, like that. It's kind of like people think something really bad has to happen, and that happens too, where suddenly they say there's no atheists in foxholes kind of thing. But the Karanka thing was a little different because it showed like a massive like a paradigm. It showed the paradigm and not just the particular things. Whereas politics in general ends up being particular things, and they try to sell it piecemeal with these issues. But that was something bigger that really triggered a bunch of people and sent people off in multiple directions, by the way. Like you've seen it. Like, it sent a ton of people, unfortunately, away from liberalism, the general liberal sort of progressive view, but it sent them equally into a horrifying view of like Gnosticism and what I call folder chasing. And I did my own fair share of folder chasing. And what I mean by that for the audience is, like, you want to seek the proper descriptions of reality. You want to find what really happened. Oh, what really happened is this. And yeah, there is value to that. You can expose lies that way. But the problem I found is that in my pursuit toward truth, my version of your story is that I experienced the difference between truth as a set of propositions and truth as a person. And that was just massively key for me. And that you asked early on, well, why orthodoxy? That's included is that if you come to the realization that truth necessarily needs to be a person, not a description, secondary, what they call second order descriptions of things, then you now are stuck on what would you call it? What's the phrase? An eye of the needle. You go through the eye of the needle. You have to take your question.
Occam's razor,
yeah. You have to take that question, who is truth? And to its logical end. And that was part of I left that part out. It's very key. That question, that distinction, truth as a set of descriptions and propositions, and truth as a person. By the way, that guy who you referred to, the atheist who did the review, I was actually very impressed with him that he made the distinction that when he went to divine liturgy, he didn't experience it as a set of propositions. He experienced that as a participation. Isn't that just beautiful? He put.
Well, but I think that's the key, is that truth has to be experienced. This is the problem with the atheist and even the modernist. They put everything on them, right? They put all of creation, all of morality, all of everything on them constantly, because they have to now become the arbiter of not just what is true, right? Of all of existence. And you can't experience the Big Bang. You can't experience evolution. You can't experience dinosaurs and all these other wonderful things, right? But you can experience God's energies all the time. We're experiencing them right now, right? And I think that's what's missing so much in a lot of. It was weird when I started to unironically, because I had, again, in that anti-theist kind of mode, I've been reading the Bible and all that stuff through the entire time. But I was reading it ironically and sort of like define the thing, right? Like,
oh man, you were so close to a huge TikTok account.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know. I stuck with it.
And yeah, you probably would have had a ponytail by now, honestly.
Oh, no, because thick hair is very sweaty. No. Yeah. Remember, I don't wear shorts because I think they're coded queer, man. Come on.
Yeah.
What do you want from me? So, the experience is I think that's kind of what's missing in a lot of these ideologies, phronemas, or worldviews, whatever you want to call them, is that essence and energy distinction. And when I encountered it for the first time, I was like, wait, this is in here? Well, crap. That explains a lot. Like, wait, I hadn't really engaged in the Trinity and really deep dived into it and like try to intellectually have a relationship with it in some ways. And once you do, you're like, well, crap. That's why I was wrong, because this is obvious, and it's obvious in light ways. It's obvious in science. It's obvious in all these other ways you want to do it. And this isn't apologetics. Like I'm trying to apply these things post hoc to things. It's like no. This exists, and these exist, and these things that also exist prove the existence of this. Like it's first principles.
Yeah.
And that's what the truth is. It has to work both ways.
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Chase. He's Orthodox, and he's like a musician, engineer guy. He's very knowledgeable of a lot of these distinctions, and we were talking about like this distinction for people listening who maybe tune out because it's all these big words, like it's like beyond me. Really, it can be kind of reduced down to like the whatness of something and then the who-ness of the what. And so if we are human beings, that's the what. You and me are human beings. But the who-ness is what makes us different human beings. If there was only the what, we would all be the same human beings. And so when we participate, the atheist has the problem, like you said, when we experience each other, they can't tell you what we're participating in because their truth is a set of propositions about something. Post-diction, these events unfolded or so, am I describing them accurately after the fact? Whereas they don't realize they're recalling something under their own view that's unjustified, which is simply the past, the recollection of what they experienced. And like you said, they can't account for the experience itself because that requires mind, a justification for mind, which someone like Matt Dillahunty, cross yourself, can't. It tells you it's just a set of freaking, collapsing dominoes, right? So I think what happened is like, I always blame the Enlightenment. Like everyone blames the Jews, and I'm like, well, what about the Enlightenment? So
I've said it before, Matt.
Yeah,
Matt and I have both said it before, where it's like, all my problems really come from old European men. Like,
oh man,
or
it's like the things that they convince people you can grant yourself without any ad hoc grant yourself. All of these categories. That's why the transcendental argument is so pesty and annoying to people, because it's challenging fundamentally, even for like what they call classical foundationalist apologists, who just argue basically within the atheist worldview, right? Mm-hmm. Even as good as they could be, like someone like William Lane Craig, who's pretty good logician. Like he can spike a couple of returns in a debate for sure. But the problem is everybody's under this assumption that you just have these first principles and you don't need an ultimate source for truth. You just have these first principles and you work off those. And now what's happening is like this resurgence of questioning all of those things. Because let's face it, there is a correlation between the philosophy of the Enlightenment and liberalism itself, and its sort of manifestation, especially in the West, where everyone's sort of like, well, I granted all these things to myself. Now all I have to do is be the rational human and go get what I want, right? Ayn Rand style. And it's just a shit show of a worldview. I mean, I blame Ayn Rand too. I mean, I wish I could give her CPR, revive her, and just smack her once.
I've just written down Dinesh D'Souza and circled it. There's a reason for that. It's like we have to share space. That's like, for me, was always the Christian apologetic of all Christian apologetics. Like, oh yeah, so now looking back, I'm like that. Well, that's just easy. That's just punching a baby. Like, why are you bringing Dinesh D'Souza on stage to debate that this is the face of Christianity? Well, of course, like that's an atheist factory right there.
Even Wesley Hunt, right? I don't know if you reviewed that, right? I mean, there is a sort of a celebration that at least a soft introduction to the term, just the term Christianity, so that people can kind of file in and like, chomp at the carcass left over from that Joe Rogan thing. But that's probably, what do you think? Like, I have a hard time categorizing. Is that a good thing, or is it complete subversion and like it ends up working against everybody because it's like, and I get it. There's a lot of people who are like, maybe they don't like online apologetics. Maybe they don't like that Jay Dyer exists the way he does. But if I'm looking at it and I'm going, if I were to pick someone to take the seat at Joe Rogan to represent a Christian view and its history, I would choose Jay. But it's just somehow aesthetically or culturally, these other, I think Billy Carson, the debate with him is probably what helped because he was already on Joe Rogan. So I think that was like a shoe-in. But I have to admit it. I get a little annoyed that the people you want, that you put in your nomination to be the representation, they never kind of make their way in the big hot seats. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a good reason for it. I think I predicted that we're going to see is the woke is going to move into this thing I'm calling neo-trads with a big Z at the end. And the neo-trads, and I'm already seeing it form, is this sort of return. I started seeing the trend in 2023, watching these like traditional cooking shows that got huge on Instagram and TikTok and a few other places. And I looked at the numbers, are like in the millions. And it's just like these women wearing like frocks and maybe usually headscarves making apple pies, right? Traditional,
just keeping quiet, just zipped mouth. right?
Right. Yeah, it was perfect. And their comments were everything you could expect, right? But from the progressive side, but a lot of them were very, very positive. And I saw that there's no filter for this. This is going to move to the center, right? And as that moves and becomes more and more normalized, you're going to see more and more of this, to the point where this sort of mush Christian, like traditional something is going to emerge, because one, it's a counterbalance to what we've been living through for the last really 20 years.
Yeah, like a reaction,
I think the liberals want 1995. I think the conservatives want 1955. I think they'll settle for 1985, somewhere in the middle. I think that
you're going to see 500.
Yeah, well, yeah, first centuries for sure, pre-schism. But to your point, as this sort of mush Christian Russell Brand, drive-through baptism, tighty-whitey thing is established, at first they're going to want the Orthodox there, because all Christian brothers, right? Hey, we're all doing the same thing. Yeah. Eventually, the Orthodox will be scapegoated, will become rivalrous. Because the one thing we would do if we're going to hold to our charge is hold a very hard mirror to them and go, you're not doing this right. And it's not just being a pissy Christian, right? It's like, no, you're missing it. And I think what's fundamental here, and really what attracted me to Orthodoxy, what got me back to it in some ways, because at the time I had this religion. I'm like, what religion do I go to? I'm like, well, my religion, my grandfather, that's accessible, and re-engaging with it in a non-ironic way. I liked the fact that suffering was front and center, that suffering had a huge part to play in your understanding of what humility is, what sacrifice is, all these other things. We're not trying to get rid of suffering. We're trying to contextualize it and put it in its place. Yeah. That God's love includes it. It doesn't exclude it. So I think with the mush Christianity and the general evangelical yada yadas that are going to emerge, the liberal wants to get rid of suffering. An end to suffering is a big liberal talking point. We're going to end poverty. We're going to end all these things. It's like, you don't get it. Like, these things are here for a reason.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't want to minimize them.
Yeah, or contrive them either. Like force them, like engineer them. I agree with you. I think I hate to telegraph it, or like I don't hope for it, but I was just saying on a recent stream how happy I was that Russell Brand didn't attend an Orthodox service and do the whole shebang through that. But the problem is that might be inevitable, that a famous retard will go through this and sort of like take
Alex Jones.
Oh man, can you imagine?
No, he is.
Yeah, but okay. That could be it. I mean,
I have it on very good authority. I think it's his son is attending, has been baptized.
It could be the case.
Liturgy.
Yeah.
I believe, from what I understand, Alex Jones is now attending liturgy.
Well, if you take his character, Loud, I honestly feel like Alex Jones differs a little bit from a Russell Brand character. Yeah, the bravado's there and everything, but I think Alex Jones would be more likely to be corrected about, let's say, theology. So what I'm pointing to is, what if it's someone like Russell Brand who does it, but then tries to take it as his own and run with it? I actually don't think Alex Jones will do that. He's big mouth, hard-headed in all these other arenas, but I feel like that's the one thing he could be corrected on and be like, oh, I'm sorry about that, like whatever. Whereas Russell Brand is like, this is my church, I'm going to baptize in my skibbies or whatever. Like, whoever it is, it could even be Jordan Peterson. Like he finally, makes his way in and does it, and then starts sort of like evangelizing.
I think it'd be
or something.
I think it'd be Joe Rogan, actually.
Well, maybe
Joe Rogan's whole shtick. But think about it, right? A lot of Joe Rogan's stuff, he talks about sacrifice, fasting, doing the hard thing.
Mhm.
He's applying to working out and all these other things. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that's just orthodoxy. Like you're
Yeah.
just describing having a prayer rule, right?
Yeah.
Ritual, repetition, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. That's you're made for it, kid.
Do you think he would,
and-
let's just hypothetically skip a year and it's just unbelievable, like Joe Rogan enters the church. I still feel like he is almost a self-admitted idiot too, where he's just like, I don't know, I'm an idiot, I'm a retard. I feel like he wouldn't start proclaiming and starting to what I'm talking about here is like a famous person becoming Orthodox and starting to like teach it, but like mangle it. You know what I mean? Like mangle it. Like that's why I look at like I'm sure Catholics aren't totally happy with Russell Brand. Exactly.
I don't know if you I don't know if you can do it with Orthodoxy, where like, who's the craziest person in Orthodoxy right now? It's like Brother Nathaniel, right? Off the top of my head that I can think of. And I'm sure there's other fathers who fall
like wacky, like just wacky.
Just wacky. Like he's like boot on head, just swinging like the fences, kid.
Diogenes got baptized.
Right. Yeah. And God bless him for it. I mean, he's doing his thing. But I don't, maybe that I'm just being naive or too hopeful. But I again, I don't believe that you can ironically engage in orthodoxy. I don't. Unlike, let's say, the Catholic Church or Protestant churches, where the it's not even rules, it's not even standards. It's just more like there's very little put upon you. Go to church, say some prayers. You don't even have to go to church in many cases. Just like say some prayers, or read a gospel, that kind of thing.
Are you saying that it's impossible to fake it because Orthodoxy would be a life as opposed to a set of activities that superficially you could check, like you check the list and you did them or something like that?
I think it's harder for someone who would be that visible. Let's put it that way. I think it'd be easier.
Right.
Sure. It'd be easy for like you or I or someone like that.
Right.
Whatever. Right. But we don't matter in that sense.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It's like like the hypothetical is like a massively influential, charismatic character, like almost exactly Russell Brand, like that kind of fixture, they have influence in like spiritualism, and they go in and they do it, and then they leave and they start doing all these like whatever pseudo seminars or something like that. Like what I'm looking at is like, oh man, that might be inevitable, but I think you're right. Like you can't get away with it, I guess, because the people you're speaking to know that the truth of the matter will exist inside of Orthodoxy. They'll know it's not, right?
Let's put it this way. Yeah, I think let's put it this way. There would have to be more corruption within the church, and we certainly have corrupted elements in the church. We can talk about, not in this conversation, but Constantinople, what's happening in Ukraine with a new false church. There's opportunities for false churches or false
to run with it,
representations of orthodoxy to occur. It's not that it's never happened, not that it's not happening now or couldn't happen in the future.
Sure,
but I think there's enough in terms of visibility. It would be really difficult, like to do that and not have any church father go, whoa.
Yeah, you couldn't build. They say castles made of sand. It's like you couldn't even get the second layer up, basically, of the building, because it's just like it has no legs. What you're saying, whereas you're saying the state of like Catholicism, and obviously everything beyond that, like that whole thing is gone. The Protestant, it's almost, honestly, it might even be close to its full demise. But what you're saying is like there's a state of affairs that these other churches are in, that the hypothetical I'm presenting is it's actually possible, and you're saying Orthodoxy doesn't have the conditions for that to be possible at the moment.
Yeah, I think because I've been tossing this ideas around, is that difference between like punishment and discipline
Mm-hmm.
is that I discipline my child. I don't punish her.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't just me playing wordsmith. It's that I discipline her because I want to bring her into order. I'm seeing her do disordered things or have, disordered thinking about something, and I want to bring her into order for her well-being because I love her and I want to see her, do well. We punish those that we have maybe given up on, or we're no longer interested in you becoming ordered. If you become ordered out of it, hey, great, awesome, right? But it's more like I'm going to punish you to almost enact a form of vengeance, right?
I got you.
Upon you.
That's a good distinction, because like if you're, let's say, practicing, like someone's shooting free throws, and the free throw technician corrects the elbow position. Correcting the elbow position doesn't require them also pinching the elbow really hard.
Right, exactly. And I think you can do the inverse in terms of discipline through even, let's say, the positive, right? The Orthodox Church, in my experience, is here to discipline you. It's here to say, you're disordered, right? Your life is all the way out here, and you got to bring it in. Right. And start applying these simple rules, and then you build on them. Right. And yes, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have your ham sandwich during Lent, and,
ham sandwich.
Just, yeah. Hey man, even just Wednesdays and Fridays, that's tough enough as it is.
Yeah.
But you just start applying the rules, and you just, and as you apply the rules, as you said before, you miss one and you feel bad. And you're like, where did that come from? Especially if you just started the rule like, a month ago. You're like, wait, what? Why do I feel shame? Why do I feel bad about ham sandwiching on a Wednesday? Like, what's all that about? And it's because you're disciplining yourself. You're committing yourself to an active discipline that leads itself to other disciplines. I don't know if that makes.
That makes sense.
A bit.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So I think that's why it's harder for, I think, a pretender, like a true out charlatan, to survive very long in that environment. Not to say that there isn't ones. I mean, there might be many among us, but
I was like looking at it, and I saw a couple of posts from Jay on Twitter where you find these types that are lying about it, and then you check in, and it turns out, like, with their own alleged priests or parishes, they're like, no, I didn't tell this guy he can do this and say this and all this stuff, and so you wonder there, like, is that just a feature of culture and technology, or do you think there might be an invested, concentrated, subversive element to go, no, you people, I'm naming you all, you're part of my asset team, go in and do this? Do you think it's one or the other, or both, or like?
I mean, we can look at this. We can look at the situation in Ukraine. One of the first things they did when to really understand how awful that situation is that the Ukrainian church is the only reason there's Ukrainian culture and language survived. It was, Ukraine was annexed over 250 years ago by Catherine the Great. The church went underground.
Is that the horse relics?
That's a horse lady, yeah.
Okay,
she's
go
charming. Look, yeah.
Charming.
Not a lot of statues. It's too bottom heavy.
Yeah.
Just
sorry.
Make a really good buoy though.
Right.
But anyways, so the church survived. Kept the Ukrainian culture intact. Of course, the fall of Sovietism, there's a return. Many Ukrainians didn't even know how to speak Ukrainian. They had to be retaught because they only spoke Russian for so long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had the Lavras, which is like the Eastern European version of Mount Athos. And one of the first things Zelensky does during this war is decry the Ukrainian church, as a spy network because of the Russian influence, and started to persecute priests, and now have shut up Lavras and destroyed churches and tortured and maimed practitioners, and then set this false church, which of course was sanctioned by Constantinople. So all this to say is that, deceit and subversion and all these other things can certainly happen in the church, but it tends to be relatively dramatic. I don't know about internal subversions.
Like the subtle ones, like...
Yeah, I mean, I went ahead Father Whiteford on for an interview. I remember, getting organizing it, and he's like, "Oh, I have to go talk to my bishop. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but I'll have to ask for permission from my bishop first before we have this conversation." And that put me back a little bit. I'm like, "Oh, okay." It's like, even someone like Father John Whiteford, who does podcasting quite often, and he's not a stranger to it, still is asking permission from his higher up. And I think that's that. Some people might think it's rigid, but I think that kind of respect to the hierarchy is what will probably make it harder for just some guy showing up like, I'm Orthodox too.
No,
what is it?
love
Coffee? Oh, I love coffee. Oh, it's wonderful. It's a cup of Joe.
No,
what is it? A biscuit?
Yeah. I get people on my channel all the time thinking that that's an insult. They're like, "Oh, you, Jimbob, do you have permission to talk about that?" I'm like, "No, I don't, and I'm happy about that." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why would that be an insult or a sign of weakness? That would be a sign of strength and cohesion. If anything, like swap it out with like an ordinary. Not to reduce it to this as an analogy, but it's like if there was a company that had a set of principles and a way of practice, and it also had its mysteries, you wouldn't want an intern or a first hire or even a first 5-year hire to be the PR representative of it, right? It wouldn't make any sense. So like if you took that view anywhere else, it makes total sense. And yet here they're like, oh, you need permission. Oh man, wow. And I'm like, no, that's what draws me to it closer, is that it's protected and defended. It's not going to say, no, just say what you want, bro. Like, it's fine. No, it's guarded. I love that it's guarded. That's to me, that's beautiful. To me, that's discipline. That's what you were talking about. That's discipline.
Yeah, to keep your mouth shut sometimes. It's like the idea of like praying with the saints, or having this, or asking the saints to pray with you. And I know a lot of other denominations have a spurg out about that. I'm like,
yeah, they do.
Look, like I've said this last year, but like I've declared war against Satan. Like I want to see Satan's kingdom come down. Like, and I want to be an active participant in that. I realize I'm part of a spiritual army of sorts. And again, I'm being careful with words, but once you realize what you're in for and what you signed on for, I want as many people behind me as possible. I want to be part of a really strong, good army. I don't want to see any soul get sacrificed. I don't want to see anyone join the other side, or burn in God's love. That's not what I want. Why would I want that? And because it's not on a purely selfish level. It's like, it's not helping me none. Right. So to praying with the saints, knowing that you have the back, we said this earlier, and maybe we'll wrap this up around here, but it's like, you're not arguing with me. You're arguing with 2,000 years of church. Now, I might be screwing up. Maybe I'm misspeaking. Maybe I should just shut the fuck up, right? Sure. Fair. But what I'm trying to represent isn't me. Like, you're not arguing with me, man. No. Take it up with St. Pesos if you want. Good luck.
Yeah, I can see how people, they look at that as a cop out, but you're like, no, that's actually a strengthened position. If anything, you're if you're not sort of verified or however you want to call it, as a representation, you're at least at minimum. What do you call the lowest soldier, like in a war, like the basic infantry or whatever?
Like foot soldier, yeah.
Yeah. That you defer. I love that I can defer. Honestly, it's so relieving for someone like me who probably is similar to you in their pride and arrogance and wanting to know things and wanting to be demonstrate that you do know things and you don't want to be left with a question mark, right, in silence. I love that I can say, you know what, go ask this person. I don't know shit about that, right? Oh, you're asking me about the divine simplicity versus simplicity. I'm not gonna mangle that for you. Go over to this video. I love that we have that massive amount of resources that go back that far. It's wonderful. It relieves me so much to be convicted in this faith so early on. I refer to as a cliff, right? Like we're climbing a cliff and we're all at different parts of the cliff. and we can tell people, come on, climb with us, and we don't need to be at the top of the cliff to tell people to climb with us, right? And we don't want people to fall either when they're midway up the cliff. But as far as like
we're all tethered together, so if you fall,
yeah,
my dumb ass is coming down with you.
I like that. I mean, that's actually probably why it's so strong and why it's able to preserve for so long and obviously forever, cannot be infiltrated by Satan. And other people go, oh, you think how arrogant you think you're part of it. Someone said this to me. You know how arrogant it is for you to think you're part of a true church? I said, if you believe there was a true church and you are a part of it, what else would you say? You know what I mean? Like if you were convicted as a man to be participating in something you thought was the truth, why would you expect a man to say that they don't believe it's the truth if they thought it was? That's bizarre to me. Wouldn't that be the weak man who thought it was the truth and didn't say so? That, to me, that would be the weak man, not the one who says it is, who claims it is.
A lot of people just defend, and this is one of the things I realize is you start defending unearned positions. You know, I like to take cracks at dinosaurs now, just because it pisses people off. But I'm like, explain a Stegosaurus. Why did Stegosaurus change shape like 5 times over the last few decades? Just explain it to me. Just like I'm a retard. I'm an idiot. Whoo, crazy, right? Yeah. Well, why did it go from bipedal to on all fours in like in the span of 20 years? How did that happen? Just for instance. But as any of that stuff is like, look, you're resting even the idea of infinity. Okay, where does infinity, like, where does it exist? Where do you conceptualize this in your brain? It's a concept. It's not, and this is one thing I said about flat earthers, because I had David Weiss on the old podcast, and one of the things that I was interested about not that Earth is actually flat, but you have this conceptual perceptual problem, and normally these two things should be working together,
right?
But now in this modern world where we have tons of reasons to doubt what we're seeing. Sure. So the concept of the world as a globe that you have to hold in your head as a globe, right, doesn't match to your perception, which is you're walking along and you're living your life as if it's a flat plane. So it's trying to marry those two things together, and oftentimes that's faith. And it's a faith in that what you have been told to conceive as the world is what the world is, even though you're not experiencing it as a globe, right? Or this is what the experience of a globe is. You know, you might as well. I found that a really interesting. People go to these dialectics. It's more like it's not really a dialectic. It's a dichotomy, and that's, you know, people are trying to make this either or statement when as we know in Orthodoxy often it's. And it was sure I'm gonna mangle this. Always do. It's yes and but. It's Lord of Spirits something or other. Anyways, Jim, thank you so much.
Yes, and wait, are you saying that Orthodoxy is the source of all the foundation of improvisation? Yes, and
well, you know, it's depends what you say, what you mean when you say yes. I mean, it can be positive. You know, it's positive and negative at the same time. It's a duality of the soul.
It's like if you say yes, you're saying no to someone else. It's impossible to avoid. It's like you're saying both at once.
It's a proposition. It's an invitation for something, you know, like order in your world. You're saying yes, order, no disorder, chaos, and it's just above and below. You know, it's like a water.
It's like a waterworks.
You're like a boat.
It's like I'm a boat. It's like, look, if you're a boat and you're sinking, it's like you're battling survival versus accepting humility. And it's like if you accept humility, sometimes you're afraid you'll just sink to the bottom. And it's like, again, what's the bottom? The bottom of what? God bless him.
Then there's a whale. Have you seen the whale?
I've seen a whale. I did ayahuasca once, you know, and people said, listen, my daughter said, listen, said, when you do this, you're going to see all sorts of shit. don't be afraid. Just confront it. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll probably see a dragon because, it's in a lot of my work. And, I would be lying to say I wasn't completely disappointed that the beast I was battling was a whale. It wasn't even scary. It was sort of goofy.
My son looks like Pinocchio,
It's like, does that make me Geppetto or does it make God Geppetto? I don't know. These are the questions that I don't want to answer on Piers Morgan, but yet here you are asking me.
It's like...
I wish Peterson... I don't advocate for swear words. I don't really have anything against them. They're context dependent, whatever. But I kind of wish Jordan just dropped an F-bomb more often for no reason. Though.
Has he ever?
Yeah, he has. When he got duped during all the Karunka nonsense, and he just went with it and ran with it. When he felt like he was sold a false, set of goods or whatever, he basically was like, and you want me to do this and that? And it's like, fuck you. He just straight up said it, right? And I was like, whoa. Which was funny because it was preceded by me doing impressions online being like, Jordan Peterson needs to just really say directly what he wants to say instead of all the floweriness. And what would that look like if he didn't have all of the 9,000 extra words to say what he needs to say? What would it sound like? It would probably be a lot of cussing, honestly, when it comes down to it.
You're fucking out of order. That's all you are.
Look, Jonathan,
get your fucking act together.
You said we were having a sleepover, Jonathan. You said it yesterday. Now you're backing out, bitch.
We brought matching. Look, I'm the teddy bear. You're the Donald Duck.
Look, I bought this. I actually had it made with all of the money. I made a fully zip up adult pajamas that have all of the iconography, your favorite iconography. You're saying I can't have a sleepover. I'm crying.
My footies are boats. Look, they're boats.
My footies are the ark. 2 arcs.
I'm gonna walk on water there, Jonathan. Look.
What does it mean to walk on water?
What water? What does it mean for water? I mean, what is walking in this sense? Did he actually walk, or was it more of a stroll? Was he just standing there?
Look, it's possible.
Come on to me.
He was possibly doing a type of skidooing. We don't know. That's why symbology is so important. We can't escape it.
Jesus, take this canoe.
Jesus.
Maybe he portaged. Do you ever see Jesus portaging through the wilderness there on the Algonquin Trail?
Look, if it was modern, if there was a different time, it could have been the case that Jesus was doing parkour. It doesn't matter.
You never know. There he is, just leaping building to building, just Spider-Man Jesus going his ways, He's trying to save you.
Look, we've got to approach the biblical stories based on at the time in which they happened. And the time in which they happened gives you a sense of what they mean. And if you take them out of the time in which they happened, they no longer hold the same meaning, And Jonathan Peugeot's all, it's time to go to bed.
No, I still got 5. I've replaced Benny's with a bit of speed there, Jonathan. I'm going to be up for 5 or 6 days. That's why I've locked the cabin. You're in for a long ride.
I thought we agreed to this. It was going to be a week. Anywho.
All right, brother. Let the people know.
Okay.
Where to find you.
Oh, yeah. MadeByJimbob is my YouTube handle. It's my Instagram handle. I still do satirical cartoons. Where else? I'm on Twitter at by Jimbob, not MadeByJimbob, but by Jimbob. And I think that's pretty much it. I do basically, what is it? It's like Wednesdays. I changed my schedule a little bit. I'm going to be doing a lot more pre-recorded skits and things. Speaking of, I still debate, but I found myself gearing a little bit more towards skits and humor than intense debates. There's a place for that, but honestly, my gifts end up being comedic and sort of doing more expression than debating, honestly. And so you could see a lot more of that. You'll see a lot more of Christo doing skits there. So go follow Made by Jimbob at YouTube.
Mashiwa, Jim. Appreciate you. Mashiwa. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jason MiRONCHUCK, and it is later than you think.